Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 25 series. Can we save the Oakland A's? And spring training of the 2038 season has just gotten underway. As I am recording this episode on Monday evening, October 28th, to be sent out into the YouTube universe early on Tuesday morning. The Yankees and Dodgers Game 3 of the World Series is just getting underway. As we talked about in the last episode, definitely disappointed that the Yankees are behind 2-0. Definitely felt that they should have won that Game 1. Don't like some of Boone's decisions. Don't like some of the defensive miscues, and that probably will come back to haunt them. That being said, I think the Yankees are going to score some runs tonight. Was listening to some sports radio traveling back and forth to work today, and some of the Dodgers fans that were talking about this game were pretty confident in Walker Buehler, and I don't see it. I think there's some chance that he gives him a performance similar to what he did against the Mets, 4 innings that are scoreless, and that would certainly be, I think, a really good result for the Dodgers. But when I look at Buehler, see a guy who hasn't done much in the majors over the past 3 years. Admittedly, he's had a lot of injuries, but going up against this Yankees lineup tonight, I think the Yankees are going to score some runs off of the Dodgers playing in Yankee Stadium. My concern is what Clark Schmidt is going to be able to do against that Dodgers lineup, and whether he's going to be able to keep the Dodgers from scoring a lot of runs as well. But especially until the late and extra innings of the first 2 games of this series, there hasn't been a ton of runs scored, and I think that that's going to change tonight. And hopefully when the night is over, and by the time you're listening to this episode, the Yankees will have closed the gap in this series to 2-1. But before we find out what happens in the real world with the Yankees and the Dodgers, we'll get this Oakland A's team ready for this upcoming season. As I noted, we just started spring training yesterday. We've got the youngster Mike Blumenshine, who we picked in the first round back in 2036, serving as our 6th starter in the rotation in spring training. Almost no chance that he will actually make the major league team, but want to get a look at him against major league pitching, because we're certainly hoping that he will be an important contributor for us at the major league level in the not too distant future. Right now, the goal is to ultimately pick the 26 players that are going to be coming north with us, and to also keep this team healthy. Juan Campos, former 4th-round pick in 2032, has been out most of last year with a torn flexor tendon in his elbow. He's a guy who had been promoted to Double-A last year and did a pretty solid job in 5 games there before he suffered that injury. Still think he could be a pretty interesting pitcher for us down the line, particularly if he's able to develop that changeup and sinker. Hopefully we'll be able to get him into the development lab this upcoming offseason. Getting a little old at 24 years old for a guy who's never played above Double-A ball, but still think that he could be added into this mix of pretty interesting young pitchers that we have in our organization, and definitely feeling like we're going to have some really nice options for the starting rotation and for the bullpen when all is said and done in spring training and this 2038 season gets underway. And our A's have been very good in the early stages of spring training, a 4-1 record already. Unfortunately, we mentioned earlier trying to avoid injuries. This one is not crippling yet, but Jackson Ferris, the fragile now 34-year-old already has a tired arm, going to have a substantial impact on his throwing, and we are certainly going to shut him down for the next week. Hopefully, we'll have him ready for what will almost certainly be his final season with the Oakland A's here in our rotation in 2038. And back to the real world rather than this fantasy world that I've been residing in for about 6 or 7 months now. Freddie Freeman just delivered another home run in this series, a 2-run shot. So I had mentioned I felt the Yankees were going to score some runs tonight, but I was concerned that Clark Schmidt might have some problems with the Dodgers lineup, and certainly the early results are not encouraging as the Yankees are down here 2-0 with only 1 out in the top of the first inning. And we've simmed ahead another week. Just wanted to respond to a comment from Dodo Dude. He suggested that given that Colt Keith was with us a year ago and actually has been with us for the past season and a half in his second tenure in Oakland at this point, that to avoid the dreaded potential hit to fan interest from him moving on to somebody else, he suggested potentially signing him to a minor league contract. That's actually something that we have been monitoring throughout the offseason. Unfortunately, as you can see, it doesn't look like Keith really wants to sign with us. And that $2.4 million that he claims he wants is actually a guaranteed major league contract from us. So I like the idea in theory, but I'm definitely not going to be guaranteeing Colt Keith any level of major league guaranteed money at this point in his career. So we'll continue to monitor him, but if he does end up signing with somebody else, it'll be kind of interesting to see what kind of fan interest hit we do take, because he's clearly not viewed as a big-time player at this point in his career by anybody. And we've simmed ahead another couple weeks. The Yankees got out of the first inning, so we've got Torres facing off against Buehler right now with a 2-2 count in real-world baseball. But the spring season is going well for the A's, a 13-7-3 record so far. Perhaps more importantly than anything else, the franchise, Jake Ortega, who had that fractured season literally and figuratively last year with the broken kneecap, having a monster spring so far with a league best 432 average and a video game-like 1.332 OPS. Juan Ramos, even though it's only the spring, tied for the league lead in ribbies, as he's always tended to be near the top of that chart ever since he's come on board for us. And Sergio Palomares, who is going to be struggling to probably find some playing time for us, leading the AL in steals. Bobby Garland, the lefty who has served as a fifth starter for us for good chunks of the last couple seasons, probably going to be in the bullpen primarily this year unless we have some injuries, tied with a former Oakland A, Chase Burns, for the Cactus League lead in wins at this point as we head into the final week and a half or so of spring training. Unfortunately, the news not all good. Kevin Patterson, who we envision as our potential fifth starter this year, going to be out for a week with an oblique strain. Honestly, looking at his ratings at this point, he's making enough money at $5 million that we'd hate to have him end up in a bullpen role. But if one of the young guys really ends up shining in spring training and Patterson is not ready and recovered from this injury as soon as we anticipate, it's not inconceivable that that spot in the rotation could be in jeopardy for Fish Patterson as we get closer to the start of the season. And unfortunately for the Yankees, after getting the leadoff batter on, Juan Soto's flied out, and Aaron Judge has struck out once again, so we're now reliant on Giancarlo Stanton to come through here against Buehler in the bottom of the first. And we've made it through the end of spring training. The A's 16 wins, tied with the Angels and the Rays for the most in the American League, tied for second most in baseball behind only the Padres. Ortega ended up with a 364 average in the spring. Ramos led the American League in ribbies. Not really going to be a tough decision for us when we think about the pitching staff. Saldana, Dora, Weiss, Ferris, and Patterson were the five that we expected and anticipated would be in the rotation when spring training got underway. And quite honestly, as we were doing our planning throughout the off season, and although Saldana and Dora were not great in the spring, Weiss was solid, and Ferris and Patterson were both outstanding. Mike Blumenshine, the youngster, had a 6 ERA in the 10 2/3 innings that he pitched for us. The 23-year-old still hasn't even played above high A ball. He will likely be headed to Double A in the Texas League, though. Looks like he's more than capable of taking on that level, and would expect that the Brown product will be up in AAA within the next couple of months if he performs as we anticipate that he might in AA. And we're working on our lineups and trying to pare this team down to 26 players that we're going to take north. Still putting some time into that. Walker Buehler's retired 6 in a row now for the Dodgers, who have a 2-0 lead as we head to the third in the Bronx. Well, so far in my predictions on the real baseball game tonight, World Series Game 3 between the Yankees and the Dodgers, I have been right in one of my 2 primary predictions. Unfortunately, they've worked out poorly for me as a Yankees fan. I was right to be concerned about how Clark Schmidt was going to do against the Dodgers lineup. We're in the top of the third now, and he just got pulled with the bases loaded in 2 outs. Mark Leiter Jr. now on the mound for the Yankees to try to hold the deficit to 3-0. So my concerns about Schmidt were well placed. Unfortunately, my confidence that the Yankees would score some runs off of Buehler have not come to fruition yet, but the Yankees have only batted twice, so there's still an opportunity for that prediction to come true as well, and certainly going to need it to with the Yankees already down 3-0. Full count now for Leiter Jr. against Will Smith right now as I'm watching. And he grounded it back to Leiter Jr., tosses it over to Anthony Rizzo, and the Yankees escape the inning down 3-0 as we head to the bottom of the third. And we've finally made the decisions on our 26-man roster as we head towards opening day tomorrow in Houston. No surprises in the rotation. Saldana, the brilliant youngster who led the American League with a 1.95 ERA last year as a rookie, is going to be in place as our ace. Chase Dora will be the number 2 starter. Doug Weiss, after close to 2 seasons in the bullpen, including an outstanding year last season, is our stopper when he was not only an all-star but also won the Mariano Rivera Award. Going to finally get his shot in the rotation, which I know will make some of you very happy. Longtime ace Jackson Ferris, the lefty, is going to be our number 4 starter in, as we talked about, what will probably be his final year in Oakland. And Fish Patterson will be our 5th starter this year. Going to give the youngster Chuck Huntley the opportunity to be a closer. He did pretty well with a 3.80 ERA in 71 innings for us a year ago. Had some success in the development lab this offseason, and given that his stamina of 25 is less than that of newcomer Mike Orozco, we're going to put Orozco into that stopper role with the 50 stamina. The fragility is always a concern for somebody in that stopper role, but we're going to try to get some value out of the back end of the bullpen with Huntley as the closer and Orozco as the stopper. Youngster Daniel Blanco, who had no runs allowed in 13 innings last year, going to serve as a setup man. Camanio Banner back in that role, and the lefty Bobby Garland also going to be a setup man, and he would be the most likely guy to join our rotation if we had some injury issues. Mike Curtis back as a middle reliever for us. Jeremy Scholl in a similar role, and then the veteran R.J. Cope, the third left-hander in the bullpen, going to be a lefty specialist and a long reliever for us. A couple of younger relievers, Jeff Tisch and Jonathan Shearer, who have 1 and 2 option years available, were the final cuts. Certainly would think that we could see both of those guys if we have any injury issues, which I'm sure we will at some point in the regular season. And I don't think there's going to be too many surprises among our position players as well. The final 2 cuts were Sam Gentile. You may remember the outfielder with the captain personality that we picked up this past offseason. He didn't end up making the team. We picked him up in part because he had 2 option years left, and he's going to begin the year in AAA. The other cut right at the end was Amare Alcindor, one of the better prospects in our organization. I think he could certainly be in the mix to be a starter for us by the time we get to the playoffs, but want to play him every day in AAA for the time being, since although he's a bit older, I believe he's 24 years old, still has some room to develop. So who made the team? The catching platoon, once again, is going to be Jaden Boakai and Dave Ackley. Excellent defensive backstops. The question is how much they'll hit. Boakai is going to finally get the everyday starting job against right-handed pitching after starting Ackley for most of the past 3 seasons. We'll still play Ackley against lefties, kind of a platoon situation, but Boakai should end up with the majority of playing time. Andy Brailovsky is going to be our first baseman against right-handed pitching only, and he's going to be on the bench against left-handed pitching because the roster is so deep at this point. Juan Ramos back as our DH, Steve Allison back as a utility infielder, Alejandro Landin back at second, Andy Toribio back at short. And we are going to begin with a platoon of Anufel Dolan and Rodney Mesidor at third base. Dolan, the captain personality, playing against righties. Mesidor playing against lefties. Mentioned that I thought that Amare Alcindor could eventually get into the lineup. I think his bat is potentially better than either Dolan's or Mesidor's. He doesn't really have the arm to be a third baseman with a 45 arm, but if Alcindor continues to develop in AAA, I think it's conceivable that we could end up perhaps moving him to second base and perhaps pivoting Landin to third base if we needed to. A lot needs to happen between now and then. Clearly our hope is that Dolan and or Mesidor will hit really well at third base, but we do have some options if they don't. Newcomer Mike Alanis going to be our left fielder. Jake Ortega will be our center fielder. Arturo Uresti back as our right fielder. And I mentioned that Brailovsky is not going to be playing every day against left-handed pitching. The reason why is we wanted to get Sergio Palomares some playing time. He's going to be leading off for us against left-handed pitching and playing in right field. And Uresti, who has a little bit of experience having played first base in the minors, as we tried to get him as versatile as possible, will swap into the first base role for Brailovsky. So certainly are thinking that when we think about our lineups with the likes of Palomares as a pinch hitter against right-handed pitching, and guys like Brailovsky and the switch hitter Dolan as potential pinch hitters against left-handed pitching, should have a pretty good opportunity for our manager to hopefully mix and match and make the most of matchups for us as we try to get these A's off to a strong start here in 2038. And 1 day from opening day means we're also 1 day from results from this shorter run through the development lab. A lot of defensive base running and a few bunting-oriented programs that we had going. Unfortunately, we've got 3 people struggling. Chuck Huntley, the new soon-to-be closer, struggling with a defensive program as a pitcher. Andy Brailovsky struggling with improving his defense at first base. And interestingly, Juan Ramos also struggling with improving his defense at first base. I guess the positive thing, if Ramos does have some regression in his skill at first base, is the fact that we'll probably only be playing him at DH, where he's played 162 games each of the last couple seasons, only playing a few innings here at there at first base. And I mentioned that when we did the Rule 5 draft several episodes ago in December of 2037 that we were hoping some of the young guys we lost might come back to us, and one already has. Chris Peterson, decent pitching prospect who was picked up by the Cubs organization. They've decided not to keep him on the major league team, so that'll give us an opportunity to get him back in the organization this year and at least see another year of what he can do in the middle levels of the minors, most likely, before we have to potentially protect him and maybe add him to the 40-man roster next year, or more accurately, later this year. And the Dodgers and the Yankees are now in the bottom of the 4th. Yankees finally broken through against Walker Buehler. No, they haven't scored a run yet, but Stanton with just a double with it out here in the bottom of the 4th, the first hit of the day against him. Mentioned at the top of the... Jazz Chisholm just flied out to right. Looked like that might have had a chance to drop in, but unfortunately for the Yankees, it did not. So 2 outs now for the Yankees as they try to finally get a run across. But as I mentioned, felt like the best case scenario for Buehler was probably kind of 4 scoreless innings like he did in the NLCS against the Mets, and he's now only a third of an inning away from achieving that. So it seems like I very well may have underestimated him, as the Dodgers still leading the Yankees here 3-0 in the bottom of the 4th. Turning back to our Oakland Athletics, you can see the preseason predictions here. Our A's are finally expected to break through and win the AL West for the second time in this playthrough in this season, expected to go 93-69 in this simulation, just edging the mighty Rangers by 2 games for the division. Taking a look at some of the top hitting predictions, Jake Ortega expected to play a full season for us, hit close to 300 with 22 homers and 44 steals. Would love to have him in the lineup every day. And Jesus Saldana expected to go 14-7 with a sub-3 ERA. Chase Dora also anticipating a 14-7 year from him. Over in the National League, the mighty Braves expected to win over 100 games. I'm guessing Mike Ramsey will be having some good years. Expected to hit 292, 36 homers, and 105 ribbies, while also going 18-6 with close to 300 strikeouts and an ERA of just over 2, as Mike Ramsey continues to try to put together perhaps the most incredible career in baseball history. And unfortunately for the Yankees, Stanton was just thrown out at home plate for the final out of the inning as they tried to get on the board. So the Dodgers still up 3-0 as we head to the 5th inning. take a quick look at what actually happened in terms of our development labs. Season expectations are for us to only have a winning record. We are clearly hoping for more than that. Jesus Saldana definitely improved his defense at the pitcher position. I know some of you don't like me putting pitchers through these development lab situations, but if I have spots and I have pitchers who aren't all that proficient, I will use them in there, even though clearly the pitchers aren't going to get as many chances as most other positions. But every little bit that we can help the team is worthwhile. To me, Saldana, excellent development lab results, did a lot to improve his defensive ability, and more importantly, he improved his stamina in the long program he was with earlier. Chuck Huntley, unfortunately, with a poor result. Doesn't look like any big changes there, but he's still a below average defensive pitcher. Andy Brailovsky, a poor result at first base as we anticipated. Successful result for Arturo Uresti in the outfield. Amari Alcindor, we talked about him. He's a guy who could be with us in the majors in the not too distant future. Improved his arm rating a little bit. Still a 45 as we talked about. But that bat is getting pretty interesting. And as I talked about, it's not inconceivable if he hits well and if both of the third basemen, Mesidor and Dolan, underproduce offensively, we could bring Alcindor up to maybe play second base for us at some point this year, pivot Landine to third base, and give ourselves potentially much better offense if Alcindor hits the way that we hope he could. Sam Gentile, the other guy that we noted we sent down, no improvement with his base running. And Ufo Dolan improves his defense at third base, so that'll help. Mike Orozco, the stopper, improves his defense. Mike Alanis, no improvement with his base running. Rodney Mesidor, no improvement at third base. Successful result for Jake Ortega in bunting. He really didn't have much to improve, but he is the franchise, so trying to get him as versatile as possible. No improvements for Toribio at second base. Jaden Boakai, the catcher, improved his bunting a bit. Chase Dora, some nice improvements defensively for him. Steve Allison, no improvement for the utility infielder. Juan Ramos, the poor result at first base that we were anticipating. Danny Phelps, starting the year in AAA, no improvements in the outfield. Joe Harmon, the young center fielder who's also starting out in AAA, improves in his bunting. Alejandro Landin also improves in bunting. And Dave Ackley, an outstanding result. His bunting and his bunt for hit both improved by 10. He was not great in those ratings to begin with, but again, with Ackley, didn't feel like we're going to likely do much for him as far as his catching ability. How many times a year a player is going to actually bunt is probably not incredibly high in this day and age of baseball, but I'd rather have a guy have a better chance of success in things like bunting and base running and defense than a lower chance of success. So we're going to use all of the development lab positions as they come up. Another year of the development lab is into the books. Take a quick look before we get the season going at our minor league system. Ranks third overall, and you can see we are probably as strong as we've ever been in terms of top 100 prospects. 10 top 100 prospects in our organization. So the big investments over the years into scouting and player development and good coaching in the minors definitely seem to be paying off. Those top 100 prospects include the third baseman Pimentel, shortstop Castillo, the outfielder Mr. Godina, starting pitcher Ernesto Comunez, the shortstop David Palomares, who's at the complex, probably will be promoted when we get the season underway. New addition, Jacoby Manelli, who's going to spend this year at the complex. Amari Alcindor, who we've talked about. Catcher Jonah Richards. Starting pitching Mike Blumenshine. And the center fielder Darnell Selvey. Andres Vigo and Federico Areola are also prospects ranked in the top 200 in our organization. So a pretty strong minor league system as the Oakland A's begin this 2038 season. And we're going to spend some time offline before our next episode perusing the waiver wire. We'll even check out the trade market. And we've got to set up all of our minor league teams before the season gets underway. So next time around, when you see us, we will be ready to begin the season at the major league level. Hopefully get these Oakland A's off to a good start as we do try to guide them back into the playoffs for the third time in the last 3 seasons, and it would be the 8th time in the last 10 years. As I noted, the primary goal for Mr. Fisher this year is to achieve a winning record, although he also wants us to acquire an MVP. I don't see us doing that. And he also wants us to build a dynasty. So although he's talking about only achieving a winning record, the fact that he wants us to build a dynasty does mean he likely expects us to win a second world championship in the last 3 years and a third world championship overall through the course of this playthrough. And we will find out what type of progress we make on those fronts as we get this 2038 season underway in our next episode. And as the bottom of the 5th gets underway here in the Bronx, the Yankees are still down 3-0 in this game, and Walker Buehler still on the mound. So with 4 1/3 innings in the books after he gets a pop-up there, he's certainly done much better than I certainly hoped and talked myself perhaps into expecting he would do today. Tip my hat to what Buehler's done so far, and the hopes are that over the last several innings of this game, the Yankees are finally to get to him and the bullpen, and we can pull out a win in Game 3. By the time you're listening to this episode, at the earliest Tuesday morning, you'll know the result, and you know whether I'm feeling some pain from a Game 3 loss or perhaps some excitement from a nice comeback from the Yankees. But until our next episode of Can We Save the Oakland A's, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.